What's going on, guys? Welcome to Same Circle Wrestling. We are doing our WrestleMania pre-show. We weren't able to get as many people as we wanted to on the show, but we do have Tim LeMay via Skype tonight. I'm Seth Skinner.
I'm Bill Harrison.
And we're going to talk about Raw a little bit. We just got done watching it. They were in L.A. At the Staples Center. We're also going to just kind of do our predictions for WrestleMania and talk in that general aspect, the WrestleMania everything. And we'll also give you a post-WrestleMania show as well. Look for that probably, I'm assuming the day after WrestleMania. I would like to do one for the Raw after WrestleMania too.
Yeah.
It would be ideal to have one after WrestleMania and before the Raw, and then another one after Raw, but that depends on who's available.
Yeah.
With any luck, we'll do it immediately after the Mania.
That's the thing right now is availability, trying to get everybody on the right schedule.
Definitely.
So, Raw was kind of it was for a Raw before WrestleMania. I expected a lot more.
It wasn't a lot for a go-home show, let alone a Mania go-home show, really.
Right.
It opened a lot stronger than it finished.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is, you have...
We opened with Sting.
Yep. And that's a first, obviously. But the thing about it is you have so many of these guys that you want to show before WrestleMania, and you throw them in these meaningless tag team matches. And like I was saying when we were watching, it's like there's no reason to... If you don't have any meaning behind the match, there's no interest in the match. You know, if it doesn't matter who's winning the match, I'm not that interested. And especially if you're just throwing guys in, you know, if you're just throwing guys in for the sake of them being on there before WrestleMania. And it's like you also want, instead of having these tag teams that are just thrown together, you could easily have singles matches.
Definitely, and I think that's one of the big problem moving forward. You see Triple H post an interview is how hard it is to write for 3 hours of television.
Yeah.
But when you're putting together like 5-on-5 tag team matches that take up 10 minutes of your spot, they could easily be, one-on-one matches between people who either have a history or have a reason to combat moving forward. You don't need to have, silly, stupid promos. You could just have guys in the ring going at it for 2 or 3 minutes and build, your storylines that way.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is you've got all these people, they're all involved in the same matches on the card, they're all in the ring together, the story potential is there, and they're just not doing anything with it.
Yeah, and I'm all for building the story in the ring versus outside the ring with promos and things like that.
Well, that's what they said. It's like I saw an interview with Michael Cole where they said that it's an idea of a soap opera, but all their storytelling gets done in the ring. But when I'm watching the show, it's half the time they're spending in the ring, and the other half they're talking about, vignettes of the stars coming back or stars that are missing, and silly promos about chicken fries, when easily they could just be in the ring explaining their problems, explaining their differences, and just going at it every single week. It doesn't need to be, quite so complicated. Let the athletes do their jobs.
Right. So we had pretty much the two significant matches, in my opinion, were the Divas match and the Dolph Ziggler match. The Divas match, which went on for a relatively lengthy time.
Interesting call to have the Divas match.
Yeah. And the thing about it is you keep seeing longer and longer Divas matches, and it's going to show you that the fans actually are having an impact on what's going on Raw. And a lot of times it seems like they don't, but this is an obvious statement that the Divas are getting some time. And the thing about it too is you have the 3 hours to fill, and like we said, they were limping to the end of this show, and you gotta fill it in somehow, and even if it's Divas, it's a filler.
Yeah, I mean, the Divas, especially having their own reality show, it gives them kind of an added edge to the rest of the card, is that they have that kind of build up on these rivalries, especially when you're talking about the release of the New Marine, which stars Mike the Miz and Summer Rae. If you're watching Total Divas, they show Summer Rae as becoming this kind of diva compared to the rest of, the women in the Divas division. But none of that played out on television if you're watching the Raws and the SmackDown.
Yeah.
So if you're watching Divas and you see Summer Rae become this problem child of the group, how come that's not being addressed? That could easily be, 5, 10, 15 minutes of in-ring action a week that they're just kind of ignoring.
Yeah. And they say that they want to play into these Total Divas storylines, but you don't see it on their big shows.
They had done a better job of it when the show was just starting out, but I really do feel like they've gone away from it a bit.
Exactly, and that just kind of kills it from a storyline perspective because they're trying to tie all these shows together where it's like if you're truly following the storylines, you have to watch Raw, you have to watch SmackDown, you have to watch Total Divas. But when you eliminate one of those shows from your viewing spectrum, all of a sudden it doesn't matter in the rest of your live and tape go-home shows.
Yeah. And most of the time, I personally don't even focus a lot on SmackDown. I pay attention mostly to Raw. SmackDown, to me, is like that thing that's on in the background and, like, it's going on, but, nothing ever really... nothing big ever really seems to occur on SmackDown anymore, and it's another byproduct of having the belts being merged and having a title holder who is so inactive.
The biggest thing they did moving into the SmackDown new rebranding was having Daniel Bryan come back. But since then, Daniel Bryan's kind of been like the focal point of SmackDown, but he hasn't done anything in those times. Sure, he's had intercontinental battles with all of the other 6 other guys he's fighting, but other than that, it's not really a big deal.
Yeah.
It's not like SmackDown is a thing you need to watch every week or else you won't know what's going on. Pretty much Raw is carrying the shoulder load of everything else.
Right, and I'm sure there's a lot of fans that just watch Raw and they're not really missing out on a whole lot. I mean, once in a while you get a couple things that'll turn up on SmackDown, but Raw is essentially carrying the brand.
That's a problem because as much as the Intercontinental feud has been a highlight of the programming in the lead up to WrestleMania, it's just these 7 guys going back and forth with each other. Nobody's really getting an upper hand over the long term, and so it's just become 6 weeks of these guys not really having anything to do except beat each other up.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things I kind of hit on with Seth, and I'm sure we'll get into it when we get into our WrestleMania prediction. And it's just when you look at that 7-man match for the letters in the title, only one guy outside Bad News Barrett has really made it a sense of, I want that title, and here's a reason why. Everybody else is just kind of thrown into it, as we look at it from fans, is, okay, they just need somewhere to be. Outside of Dean Ambrose and Bad News Barrett, I don't see a reason for anybody else to be in this match other than, it's WrestleMania and they need a time to shine.
Well, it's not only that, but they also want to elevate the belt in a way where, because they have almost a vacant title, in a sense, they have to bring one of these belts up, either the U.S. Championship and the Intercontinental Championship. And I think at WrestleMania, really what they're doing is elevating both titles with both of those matches. The Rusev-Cena match is definitely trying to elevate the U.S. title as well. So I think really the reason they're in there is not only to for the fans' sake to see them, but also to elevate those belts because they need to be there.
And especially tonight when you saw Rusev really eliminate Cena as an entity, that kind of makes up for the fact that they had Rusev, 2 weeks ago, become a joke when he had to tap out, and it was the limpest tap we've seen in quite a while.
Yeah.
I think that making Cena look just that vulnerable to Rusev does that much to rise the profile of this match to something that's a little bit more substantial, other than the fact that, Cena's the go-to guy, and if he's going to break the streak, he's the guy who's going to do it.
Yeah, it really did feel like a major correction of a mistake that they had made.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's one thing to make Rusev tap out, but it's another thing to make him look just that out of it as he went forward.
Especially to the STF, which is really not that impressive looking of a submission.
Yeah.
Well, look at the way they called it as he drew it in. They even made a reference to, oh no, he's drawing it in correctly this time. Because for the last few years, we've kind of made fun of the fact that Cena doesn't really put people in the STF. He puts them in like the half STF.
Yeah.
Just tap out because he's Cena.
Super Cena. So let's go back to the Divas match. Essentially, this has been a feud between AJ and Paige and the Bellas for the last couple weeks, and this kind of culminated tonight with that kind of that animosity between AJ and Paige. After Nikki Bella got the pinfall win, AJ basically, well, actually what happened was AJ basically fucked Paige over, and it kind of culminated, like I said, between these two divas that have been, the thing is, like, they want these guys to feud, these two girls to feud, and the thing is, like, it's taking so long for that to happen because of the Bellas. And I don't know, like, I've heard rumors too about Nikki and, I don't know if it's just Nikki or Brie being, like, at the point where they're almost done.
Well, as far as I know, following through the Total Divas spectrum, the last episode hinges on Nikki and Brie going through their new contracts. I think this is around Survivor Series last year. And they had the option to renew for like another 3 years or something like that. And then that also hinges on like the John Cena marriage proposal and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
That when you watch the episode, it puts it on a cliffhanger. And, you know, that episode aired like 2 weeks ago, but you're still left with 2 weeks of, I don't know, airing on television. So when you're watching the Bella Twins come out, you're not sure if they're even relevant to hold the titles at the moment, because if they lose them at WrestleMania or the week after, you're kind of left in this idea of what we were doing in the meantime. So especially when you watch a match like Paige and AJ break down, it's obvious that Paige and AJ are the next big feud in the women's division. So the fact that you're just having Brie and Nikki out there to hold the belts and look pretty and kind of become, you know, the mainstays of the division to draw your attention kind of ruins the focus of the match.
Yeah, and they're kind of, Nikki's really the only heel that they have. I think AJ can probably go to that, go in that direction, because Paige is obviously the fan favorite, I think. I mean, I would say so. I think AJ and Paige...
She's the new young gun.
Yeah. But, I mean, I think crowd reaction shows that Paige is probably more... I would expect her to be the face more than AJ, if those two were to go in those separate directions.
Oh, I definitely agree.
So, essentially, we're just waiting for this Divas match at WrestleMania. Again, it was just kind of another build-up to another Mania match. We also saw Dolph Ziggler versus Daniel Bryan, which I thought was interesting because they had Dean Ambrose as special guest referee. And I think these are the three guys, in my mind, that are the most likely candidates for the Intercontinental title.
I definitely agree, but, I mean, as Seth, you and I talked about during the airing of Raw, it's when one of those three guys takes the title, what do you do with the other two? Based on the fact that, you know, it's easy to say all three could at any point, you know, main event any kind of pay-per-view or even carry the heavyweight title outside of a Brock Lesnar reign. If you put the title on Ambrose, Ziggler, or Bryan, what are you really doing to the other two and the rest of the state of the mid-card?
Right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that they grouped those three together because they're all faces, and outside of Ambrose, there hasn't been any one of them that's given even the slightest inkling of a heel turn. I think you might see Ambrose turn, but none of the other two I can really see going that direction.
Yeah, I agree.
I think an Ambrose heel turn hinges on what they do with Roman Reigns at WrestleMania on Sunday. Because, I mean, Ambrose makes it no hint that he's a super great friend of Roman Reigns, both in the ring and off the ring, you know, both storyline and non-storyline. Yeah. So, I mean, unless they have an inkling to do something with Roman Reigns as a heel, I think it's going to be hard to get Ambrose to go along with that.
And I think they could do a solid Roman Reigns heel turn. And the thing about it is he's at the point where he's almost got the John Cena effect, where he's what's the word I'm looking for?
Anti-hero?
Yeah. He's polarizing.
He's not the hero WWE deserves.
Yeah. But he's got that mixed fan reaction where, you know, he's got half of the crowd booing him and half the crowd cheering him. And so really they can go either way. With Cena, he's at a point where it's like you can't really turn him heel because of not only the age of his fan base, but just his fan base in general and his whole persona. With Roman Reigns, that's much easier to see him going to a heel side.
Yeah, and if you read his interviews, I mean, anything to do with him, he comes off as a natural heel, really. It does seem like he'd be a lot better in that role than the one they've given him at present.
Yeah.
Well, he's got that reclusive nature to where he doesn't speak much, and it's obviously because they know he doesn't have that strength as a talker. But, you know, that natural ability to not say so many words and just try to act big, strong, and tough. But he comes across as that guy in the ring who's going to act big, strong, and tough, but it's only because he doesn't have the words to back it up. Yeah. And usually you can get away with that with somebody like Brock Lesnar, who can have somebody talk for him, or he has the resume to do it as well. But with Roman Reigns, you have him going out there and speaking in such limited terms that you're not really sure what you have. You have what can be a caged animal backed into a corner. But coming up to WrestleMania, we don't know really what Roman Reigns is made of. And that's what makes Sunday super exciting.
And I think another thing is, Roman Reigns, he really just gives off a natural aura of almost arrogance that I think he could work with as a heel.
And it's not only that, but the fact that Lesnar's contract is so up in the air, it makes it very, very difficult to predict that match.
Exactly, and I even saw something from Squared Circle or Ring Rust, one of the two, that said, outside of Reigns holding the title, the only positive is the title changing hands twice. So even their prediction is either Lesnar holds the title or Reigns wins it and loses it almost automatically.
Yeah.
Going back to Ambrose, I think the Rollins holding the case, I think that's another way you could work him into that whole thing. Have him, not necessarily to turn him heel, but just to get him involved. Maybe have him run back out to interfere with the cash-in or something.
That's what I'm most looking forward to probably in WrestleMania, is seeing what Seth Rollins does with the briefcase, because you know something's going to happen with it. Let's move on to predictions, because...
You want to start at the beginning of the card?
Yeah, I want to do the pre-show, and which really there's only, I don't know, there's probably just going to be one match on the pre-show. There usually is.
There's no way this is in order.
Yeah, it's definitely not in order the way we have it listed here. But I guess we can go through it this way. It's not really going to matter.
Might as well.
So I don't know. I think this match just got announced like really recently. And it's a fatal 4-way for the tag team belts. And Kid and Cesaro are the belt holders right now. They're going against Los Matadores, the New Day, and the Usos, who I thought one of them was injured, but apparently that is not the case.
From what I understand, he is injured, and they're just going to limit him during the WrestleMania show. And that's why it's on the pre-show. They're going to try and bury it as much as they can. I mean, from what I understand, it's a shoulder injury that's probably okay at the moment. Kind of like what they did with Dean Ambrose when they kind of put him in that shoulder sling for a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. But it's going to end up being, he's not going to be a major factor. They're not going to win the title.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect them to win the title anyway. I almost just expect Kid and Cesaro to defend here.
I mean, really, that's the only competition that they have, because Los Matadores really are just the group they have to be there. ipso facto. In the New Day, it's nice to have them, but their gimmick has not caught on whatsoever.
No.
I do think that becomes one of the advantages of having the Usos as that twin tag team. Is they're both solid workers, but they're both... Jimmy, at least, he's good enough, and the fact that they look so much alike, Jimmy can easily carry his way through that match and keep Jay as limited as he needs to be.
Yeah.
And the fact that they all have their thirds with them, it allows them to do a lot more, have a lot more dynamic booking than they otherwise could, so there's really a lot of outs they have to work around that.
Right. I think overall, like, my prediction would be Kid and Cesaro. They're probably going to pin someone from the New Day just because of how... Because Los Matadores went over tonight
They did,
on Raw.
They've been going over for the past few weeks, really.
Yeah.
especially with El Torito.
So my prediction would be Kid and Cesaro pinning somebody from the New Day.
I almost think it's Kofi with some kind of acrobatic move, because I don't think they can go a WrestleMania without showcasing Kofi doing something extreme.
Yeah. So I think that's unanimous as far as who's going to come out on top of that one. For a pre-show, I really wouldn't expect the belt to change hands anyway, or the belts to change hands.
Right.
So I guess we'll move on to what is actually the main event. We touched base on it a little bit earlier. Lesnar versus Roman Reigns.
And this is definitely interesting because you have Brock Lesnar coming off his match at Royal Rumble, where he obviously was setting up stuff for Seth Rollins to show his strengths. So depending on what his contract situation is, this could be a very fluid match between him and Roman Reigns.
Yeah, and in the last few weeks, I have seen a decent amount of improvement in the in-ring work of Roman Reigns because he's had time to... He's had longer matches, and he's had time to stretch those matches out. And that's the thing that I really had a problem with Roman Reigns, was that he wasn't able to stretch matches out. He was really based on single spots, blowing up, and because that's how he was in the Shield. He was
always the closer.
Yeah,
He was
exactly.
always the guy who's going to come in, he's going to get you with a clothesline, Superman punch you and then hit a spear and then give the tag.
Yeah.
But in like a 20 or 15 minute or 20 match, you can't really expect that to carry you as a wrestler.
Yeah, you can't do it in a singles match in general, unless you're John Cena.
Exactly, but John Cena's known as a grappler, which we're not really seeing out of Roman Reigns. We haven't really seen too much in a hand-to-hand back-and-forth combat between Roman Reigns.
And as much as Roman Reigns' in-ring work has improved, and it most definitely has, I do still feel like he's a bit lacking in the psychological aspects of the selling and basically the stringing together a match, like Seth was saying, but I have been more impressed almost with his mic work. He comes off a lot more naturally in his promos now, and I think that's probably been his greatest area of improvement.
Right.
That match between Daniel Bryan and him at Royal Rumble was impeccable, just on the fact that it was able to show he can last those amount of time, but his in-ring work outside of his closed set maneuvers is kind of leads me to believe it's not really a selling point in his, style of wrestling.
Yeah, he's another one of those golden boys where I feel like the way that they don't let him do as much as he could, in the same way that Cena is sort of limited because of the risk of injury. But at the same time, it's like you got a guy that, like, the fans are behind. He has a good look. He's like just the type that Vince McMahon likes to push. So, and he's pushing him as hard as he possibly can right now, especially if he goes over Brock Lesnar. But I think really what it hinges on, in my mind, is Brock Lesnar's contract status.
Exactly. Like, if Brock's gonna still be part of the WWE a year from now, I don't see him being quite the type that's going to sell a maneuver or even sell a title change unless he has something to gain from this in the long term.
Yeah. And you don't want it to be a Lesnar versus Goldberg.
Yeah, but like, what I'm really looking for in this is a back and forth kind of match that doesn't lend me to know what's going to happen 30 seconds after the bell rings. If this is a match that can kind of draw it out and make me believe that Roman Reigns can win at any 5-minute sector of this match, then I think it's something better than what we expected.
So I think, like I said, this one's really hard to predict. Like, if I was going to go, like, to have to go one way, I'd have to say Roman Reigns.
What about you, Bill?
Honestly, I do expect Roman Reigns to win just for the fact that they've invested so much into this push. Like, they've cooled pretty much everyone else off in order to make Roman Reigns look better by comparison, and if Brock ends up winning anyways, that all goes for naught. So I do think Roman Reigns is going over
but
at
also,
the end of the match.
You know, it doesn't necessarily go for nothing, because you have Lesnar that's still trying to be that huge heel. And if he just knocks this guy off that's coming up so strong, it makes him look like an even more ridiculous heel. And that's the thing, is that it's all hinging on his contract status.
I want to go bold here, and both of you guys kind of sit back and let me have this moment. Is going to lose to Roman Reigns. Seth is going to come out, cash in on his contract. Brock is going to try to fight back, and Roman Reigns is going to hold the contract going into Monday Night, or hold the title going into Monday Night Raw after beating up Seth coming in trying to cash in. Because I think it's adamant that they're trying to have Seth be the future of the WWE, but I think his future goes beyond him in July this year. So I think him cashing in and losing just beefs up the Roman Reigns, myth. So be it.
Yeah.
I think Roman holds the title going into Raw.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, again, there's so many factors. You got the Lesnar contract. You have the Money in the Bank contract with Seth Rollins. It's just, this is almost impossible to predict. So this is probably what I'm most interested in. But like I said, I still go with Roman Reigns. It's hard to say that he's going to take a pinfall win or anything like that. But, I mean, somebody's got to go over with a pinfall, so.
Right, and I just think if Roman goes through all that work to win it, and they're so right through at least Raw the next night, and then it becomes a whole new set heading into SummerSlam.
So we'll move on to Sting and Triple H. This is Sting's first match officially in the WWE. This is interesting because they're kind of playing up the WCW angle, WCW versus WWE angle, which sort of been there before, but not ever at this magnitude. I think when they initially bought WCW and they brought all those the half of the roster in, it was kind of the weak guys, because all the big names from WCW were getting paid to sit on their ass because they still had that guaranteed money from those contracts. So when they brought in that the WCW invasion type thing, it didn't go over as well as it could have. So I think playing up this WCW angle is a good idea. I mean, and Sting really was the face of that company, and at the time, during the Monday Night War, it was Triple H was the face of WWE in a sense, because of DX and things that were going on in his storylines. So I think that angle is perfect.
Well, when you look at the Monday Night Wars, you saw the NWO, which was billed originally in the WCW as a WWF faction.
Yep.
So when that came in and kind of disrupted the WCW's way of thinking, Sting was really the lone guy who stood up against it.
Yep.
So now when you see people like Hogan and Nash and Razor Ramon going in the Hall of Fame, or in the WWE Hall of Fame, you're seeing kind of an open spot in the WCW, and Sting kind of holds up that whole, carrying the banner for all these years, even though he had years in TNA and Ring of Honor.
Yep.
You really see an opportunity for the WWE to kind of squash all of that and say, we are the one and for all. We've conquered everything.
And like you said, Sting was kind of the one guy against the NWO, and that's sort of playing out in the same exact way with the Authority. Sting is basically the vigilante against the Authority at this point, and it's kind of ironic that it would play out in that same way.
He really didn't address his said this is a separate entity. He's just here to take on Triple H.
I think ultimately the fans wanted to see Sting and The Undertaker, but I think if The Undertaker wants to come back next year, this is the way to go. Sting has to go over Triple H.
And Seth, we've debated this.
Yeah.
I really see this as Undertaker losing on Sunday to Bray Wyatt and bolstering his resume, moving into like a SummerSlam-esque kind of thing, going after the title.
Mm-hmm.
And what a better way for Undertaker to go out but squash the WCW and squash Sting at WrestleMania 32 and going out as, the hero of all heroes and vanquishing the WCW's made man.
Yeah.
And interesting to note is that WrestleMania 32 is being held in Dallas, Texas, held in the home state of The Undertaker, so I feel like that would be a little more... Oh, right. So that would be a little bit more forgiving circumstances for fan service on that level, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's almost destined for that to happen, so I think it's going to be a Sting...
Because people don't want to see The Undertaker lose 2 in a row.
Yeah.
But I think if he's going to lose 2 in a row, him beating Sting and going 22-2 is way better than anything he could do beating Bray Wyatt and going 22-1.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So I think the verdict on this is Sting.
I think it has to be. I mean, Triple H has a losing record at WrestleMania anyway, so what does he have to gain on beating Sting?
Hey, that's all he's been doing is putting guys over anyway, so good guy Triple H is going to put Sting over.
It's fun to see it that way, definitely.
So then we got the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, which I don't think everyone is announced, or are they?
It's pretty close.
So I don't really feel like listing off all these names.
The winner is somebody who's already announced. And, I mean, if you want me to run through it, it's either The Miz, Curtis Axel, Ryback, Fandango, Adam Rose, Zack Ryder, Jack Swagger, Titus O'Neil, Darren Young, Big Show, Kane, Eric Rowan, Mizdow, Sin Cara, Goldust, Heath Slater, Mark Henry, Connor, Victor, and whoever wins the NXT cluster.
Yeah, which we were talking about before the show. And I think that it's probably going to be somebody along the lines of Adrian Neville, or... Is Sami Zayn involved in that?
No, he is not in the Fatal 4-Way.
So I would not be surprised if we see Adrian Neville soon. I would have liked to see him sooner.
I think he's the guy that gets the promotion because the other 3 guys are very active in NXT storylines. It's like you still see Tyler Breeze out there battling every other guy who comes up against him. Adrian Neville's kind of been sitting on the quiet backseat for a while, but he's been active in house shows, so I assume this is just his call to action.
So who do you have winning this match?
I have it in my heart. I have Damian Sandow finally getting that pull over The Miz, because I think eliminating him is something that can definitely elevate his status, but I think him winning the entire Battle Royal definitely validates his character and his whole thing moving forward and gives him something to stand on and avoids being, Cesaro 2.0.
I agree. If I had to pick somebody, I would definitely take Sandow as well. But I also would not mind seeing Jack Swagger win because, like we were saying earlier during the show, Swagger is so over with the crowd but doesn't get the time that he deserves, I don't think. Who you got?
In my mind, the match is going to come down to either Ryback or Mizdow. Ryback is the one they've been transparently pushing as the favorite in this match so far, so I don't think that's the way they're going to go with it, really. I'd like to see Mizdow, but Mizdow being another obvious choice makes me think that they could have Miz eliminate him just to prolong the feud for another month. So any one of those three, I wouldn't be surprised with. The rest I think are non-factors, but I do lean towards Mizdow.
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind seeing Axelmania go over either.
I would not mind seeing, Mizdow versus the Miz at what's the next pay-per-view?
Extreme Rules, I think.
Is it? No, it's
Extreme Rules.
Is it Extreme Rules?
I think that's the next one.
I feel like it's supposed to be Payback, but
yeah,
I think I saw Extreme Rules.
2015. I could totally see a Miz versus Mizdow Extreme Rules kind of match where Mizdow finally gets that upper hand.
Yeah, I do believe that match deserves a 1v1 blow-off.
Yeah. Alright. Next match is, we were talking about it a little bit earlier, after we talked about the Ambrose, or Ziggler-Daniel Bryan match. This is one of the main attractions of WrestleMania, I think. They've been hyping this one up a lot. And like we were saying, they're trying to elevate this belt. And it's a ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. Bad News Barrett, who is the title holder currently, versus R-Truth.
I almost guarantee this leads off the whole pay-per-view.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, a lot of people are looking at this like it's almost a main event. And the thing about it is there's like 4 or 5 main events on this card. So that's how WrestleMania always is.
I look at tables, ladders, and chairs where they had Dolph Ziggler versus Luke Harper lead off the match for the Intercontinental title. I see that being the same thing moving forward with WrestleMania. That's going to be the match that leads off at 8 p.m.
Yeah. That would be a good way to start it, I would say. But it's Bad News Barrett, R-Truth, Dean Ambrose, Luke Harper, Dolph Ziggler, Stardust, Daniel Bryan. And the three that, I think we said it earlier, the three that I don't see any of these other guys going over besides Ambrose, Ziggler, or Bryan.
The only other thing I can rule in would be, the returning Sheamus, which we've been talking about. And I think putting him in the Battle Royal would be a nice idea, but him winning it all would be so predictable and so boring that it would kind of waste his return.
Mm-hmm.
I think him returning and being the 8th man in a ladder match just kind of evens out the odds and makes it more entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
And the rumors have been going around are Sheamus feuding with Daniel Bryan on his return, so that would be a pretty good way to kick that off, too. Yeah,
and like I said, we're elevating that belt, and what better way to do it with somebody coming back from injury?
100%. That just makes more sense to at least even the odds, because right now you have 4 faces and 3 heels. I mean, you can't imagine those writing the scripts are that oblivious to having that kind of drop-off.
Yeah. And then we saw a little bit of a preview for this, Rusev and John Cena. Rusev, who won the last pay-per-view match with Cena. It's a rematch for the United States Championship. They're playing up the whole hero John Cena USL angle. And as much as I don't like it, I'm gonna say John Cena. They built Rusev up quite a lot, but it's like eventually he's got to lose to somebody, and I don't see him losing to anybody else but John Cena.
Yeah.
I think especially with the lack of Lana at ringside, this is making Rusev the most vulnerable we've seen him since the Royal Rumble last year. Mm-hmm. So I think this is definitely the opportunity for Rusev to finally take his pinfall cleanly and then carry that forwards as to, the rebuilding of his monster.
Yeah. And WrestleMania traditionally does tend to be slanted towards the faces, so I wouldn't be surprised to see John Cena go over here, and then potentially my expectation would be to see Rusev take the rubber match at Extreme Rules just to try to keep him strong.
Oh, definitely.
So I think we're all it's unanimous on that one, right? John Cena.
Unfortunately, so yeah.
And we talked about it a little bit earlier. The Divas match, AJ Lee and Paige versus the Bella Twins. And I think, like in my mind, it's going to be AJ and Paige.
I think if you're going to follow the face mentality of WrestleMania, it's definitely going to be AJ and Paige. But especially after you saw on, Monday Night Raw, you see AJ elbow Paige in the head, kind of costing her chance at the title. They're immediately hinting at some kind of feud before they even, step in the ring against one another. So I think partially on my end, I see the Bella Twins winning just to, cause feud on the next Monday Night Raw.
I can see it. I mean, you need the thing about it is what we've said so far. I think mostly is the faces winning these matches. So it's like you gotta balance it out a little bit. And I'm sure we'll be wrong on a lot of these, but because that's just the way WrestleMania always is.
I would expect the Bella Twins to win just because immediately after having that AJ Lee and Paige strife, having them go over would be sort of making the Bellas look weak. But then again, AJ and Paige winning would put one of them in contention for that title theoretically. And if you do see those two feuding, you would expect the title to be involved in that feud.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is I think that belt has to transition to one of these two eventually for that feud to happen.
The part that weighs in on me is the fact that we're not sure that the Bella Twins are going to have a career swan song, their big moment. So I can see them winning just to have, their sisterhood or whatever as, winners of WrestleMania.
Yeah.
So I am still going with AJ and Paige. You guys are saying Bella Twins?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's probably like the first one we've actually been split on. So then we'll move on to The Undertaker and Bray Wyatt. This has been getting a lot of promo time because Bray Wyatt, The Undertaker hasn't been there, so Bray Wyatt's carrying the whole thing really. It kind of really picked up when The Undertaker's music played. I think it was Raw. And the casket rolled out. Bray Wyatt is in the casket, does a whole promo calling out The Undertaker. And I think it was, last week The Undertaker responded? Or was it the week before?
Yeah, it was last week, I believe.
But anyway, we kind of like were seeing hints of it before it even really showed up on TV. But I think it's going to be an interesting match. Bray Wyatt's kind of leading himself on to be the new face of fear. And The Undertaker's trying to come back from a loss to Brock Lesnar. So, it ultimately could go either way. But, like I've been saying, I think it's Bray Wyatt.
Yeah.
I really want to agree with that. And I really want to say Bray Wyatt based on, just my thought process of having a Sting versus Undertaker the following year. I think if you're going to have Sting go over Triple H, that having the Undertaker or the Phenom come back next year as, the shoo-in from the Authority to finally vanquish WCW, I think in order for that to happen, you have to have Bray Wyatt get over. And in addition to that, having Bray Wyatt go over, then you create, another main event star outside of Reigns, Rollins, and Ambrose, and all those guys in the IC. And this is the way you create another monster beast that people have to contend.
I think that's the biggest thing is trying to get Wyatt over. He's been... they fed him to Cena not too long ago, and it's like you got to put him over somehow. And, The Undertaker is such a loved character that how else can you become the face of fear, than going over The Undertaker?
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, the feud is based entirely around that idea of Bray Wyatt taking up that mantle from The Undertaker.
Mm-hmm.
So that if Bray Wyatt were to lose this match, I think that would be even harder for him to recover from than the losing the Cena feud was.
Right.
And having Bray Wyatt put The Undertaker at 21-2, I think that puts The Undertaker in a much better position to redeem himself, say, against a Sting in what'll be a very obvious match, next year WrestleMania. I don't see such a problem with The Undertaker taking 2 straight losses if it means he gets that win over Sting next year.
Yeah.
And if Bray Wyatt is going to win this match, I would expect it to be a very psychological and theatrical affair. I'd expect really maybe post-match or in the build-up to the finish, seeing some special effects maybe. I almost expect to see like The Undertaker vanish after losing and maybe the lantern glow blue or something outlandish like that.
Yeah,
just a
cool.
Visual passing of the torch. I think you're going to see in the aftermath.
And they're also playing up the supernatural aspect of it like heavily. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that as well.
But we also have to agree The Undertaker looks much better this year than he did last year. A week out from the event.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been so many pictures on the internet, but nothing really like definitive until this week. And it's, I have a good feeling about the shape he's in.
Yeah. And I think letting Bray carry the build-up to this match, The Undertaker not having to hit the road with the rest of the roster, I do think that helped him a lot in being able to build his health back up.
So, I say Bray Wyatt.
Yeah, that's
definitely Bray Wyatt. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely have to go with Bray on this one.
And then we got like 10 minutes, so, we're going to talk about Rollins and Orton.
This is a really tough match when you look at it because you want to be able to give Randy Orton some kind of vindication off the fact that he was off TV for 4 months and his writing back into the script has been, backwards and forwards, and he hasn't looked strong during any of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you really want to see Orton have some kind of upper hand. But you also have to realize, Rollins has his role as, the next authority mainstay. And he's got that Money in the Bank briefcase. You have to imagine that somehow J&J security factor into changing the scope of this match.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I think ultimately Seth Rollins wins. I think Rollins... The thing is, they're both already at the top. I mean, you really can't push either one much farther than they have been. I mean, Rollins more so than Orton. But I think in the positions that they're in, they're already in the spotlight.
See, I tend to think that Randy Orton would win this match just because I feel that Randy Orton needs to get his retribution on Seth to have this feud closed up if you want Seth to be involved in the finish of the main event.
And I agree. I mean, you look at Orton, he's been the authority mainstay for so long that, him losing in this match doesn't ruin his identity any more than any other loss he's had against Cena in any cage or any other event. In Rollins, he's largely kind of been left off the map. I mean, he had that victory against Ambrose. He was solid against Orton the last time around. And, he held his own against Cena and Lesnar. That you kind of only have to imagine the sky's the limit for Rollins and the writing staff, so you have to imagine he comes out strong here, especially if they plan on having him cashing in his briefcase anytime soon.
Yeah.
I do expect both of them
to waltz out to Randy Orton in a 3-on-1 effective match.
I do expect both men to come out looking strong, but Rollins does hold the briefcase, and historically they have been comfortable booking the briefcase holder a little bit weaker just because they have that crutch of having the guaranteed title shot. They really don't need to be kept as strong as another wrestler would.
Agreed.
I think Rollins has proved himself, and so it's it's at the point where Orton is working well as a face. I mean, I guess I would consider him a face now. But
Yeah.
but it's the thing is that I just see Rollins has more to lose than Randy Orton does. Plain and simply because Randy Orton's been around for how long? You know, he's had his time. It's one of those things where Orton's still going to be at the top either way. And, you know, either way it goes, really, they're both still going to be at the top.
Here's my issue looking at it moving forwards. Say this is the match that leads off the 9 o'clock hour, if we assume that the ladder match leads off the 8 o'clock hour based on the 4-hour span of WrestleMania. If you have Rollins lose to Randy Orton, what sense does that briefcase matter to the main event? If you have Rollins beat Randy Orton at 9 o'clock, it's totally understandable for us as fans to see him come back at 10:55 and cash in that briefcase and go hog wild on the guys left in the main event.
Yeah.
If he loses to Orton, then we can naturally just write him off for the rest of the pay-per-view.
And that's the thing about this is that the way that we have these listed is like, I don't think they've really showed us exactly the order in which they're going to be.
Right.
So it's hard to say that. But I mean, we know that it's definitely before the Lesnar and Reigns match.
Right, that has to be, a lead off an hour. Or that has to be the main event overall.
Yeah.
But when you look at, the main matches that stick out to you, I would have to assume that Rusev John Cena leads off, say, at 9 o'clock hour, and that Rollins leads off at 10 o'clock hour. You can probably switch those two. But, people tend to tune in at the top of the hour, so they're trying to hit those main matches as those times start.
I don't know. I just think overall we're in for, a pretty solid WrestleMania. Even last year, I don't think I was as excited as I am this year for it.
I think this has been a solid, underwritten WrestleMania that's really going to rise up as a surprise year. But, it hasn't had a great lead-up, but I think it's lending itself to having great surprises and great stories moving forward. One of those WrestleManias that had a year lead-up to half the matches and leaves you blank.
I think it's more... Yeah, exactly. I think it's more about... the characters in the matches versus the storylines, for me.
Despite the weak build-up, I do think I am a lot more interested in this WrestleMania than I was just 2-3 weeks ago, just due to the circumstances surrounding particularly the main event, but also a few of the other matches, specifically how Roman Reigns has improved, and I am more intrigued to see how that main event goes than I was, by far.
Yeah, and I think the biggest factor that I'm looking at is the Rollins briefcase. That's the wild card in this situation. Because that could come out anywhere.
100%.
I mean, he could use that in the Intercontinental match if he wanted to.
I think you can mark this down and write it with whatever signatures you want to verify. This WrestleMania will reward the die-hard viewer way more than it will the casual viewer, which is completely skewing what we've seen the last few years. Somebody who's watched every single week will have a payoff on Sunday way more than they would if they watch, once a month or every WrestleMania. This will be a WrestleMania that really ties together the stories we've kind of been sitting around going, well, what's going to happen next? I think it'll be a solid pay-per-view and a solid WrestleMania. Not the best, but it'll definitely tie a lot of stuff together.
Yeah. I think the biggest one for the casual fans is probably the Sting Triple H match.
And I think that lays the cards to finding out what happens to The Undertaker, so I feel like almost that match has to happen first.
Yeah.
And you could almost have the interaction between Sting and Undertaker happen at a certain point during WrestleMania if they do decide to go on that route.
As I said to you, Seth, there would be nothing more intimidating than having Sting beat Triple H and hearing the gong ring out over the arena.
Yeah.
And I am expecting, as you said, that this will serve as almost not quite a reboot, but it will wrap everything up. And I do expect from this show going forward almost to be like a new season of WWE, more so than WrestleMania has served in past years.
Yeah. It's like, it almost seemed like last year they didn't reset as much as they should have. And I think after WrestleMania, you usually do want to reset. Maybe the Raw after should be a little bit of aftermath, but after that, you should kind of, just bring up fresh storylines.
Oh God, I can't wait for the Raw after WrestleMania. Just the way this is all leading up, there's got to be some kind of vindication to waiting until the Monday after.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And this is the first Mania season where NXT has been at the level it's at now, so it's pretty much the first one where you have that sense of looking forward to the future.
Mm-hmm.
I see a reward for the network users who have actually paid attention to NXT. And I see it as like a rebranding kind of year. This is the WrestleMania. They can put their stamp on the new idea.
Yeah. They very much need that.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. It's been fun. We got a post-WrestleMania show after, and like I said, we're going to have it up probably on either Monday or maybe we'll wait. Maybe we can do it on Monday after Raw or something like that. But only time will tell. We'll let you guys know on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter if you can. It's at S Circle Podcast. We're constantly updating. If we're watching the shows, we're constantly giving you up-to-the-minute updates, live results, things like that. So follow us on social media, and we'll let you know when our shows are coming. Thank you, Tim, for talking to us on Skype.
Good to have you.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. I'm Seth Skinner.
I'm Bill Harrison.
And I'm Tim O'May.
We'll see you guys next time.